So welcome everyone to cmd-f Phase 2, Stories of Struggle and Success in STEM. So excited to have you here. Thank you for coming out. So a quick disclaimer, the following event will be recorded and shared, so the speaker's video and audio will be recorded, and any questions you ask will be part of the recording as well. Another note is that nwPlus is based on the UBC Point Grey Vancouver campus, which sits on the traditional, ancestral, and ceded territory of the Musqueam First Nation. And the cmd-f team would like to acknowledge that female or woman is not an accurate description for many, and it may make some feel unwelcome, so we use an asterisk to specifically and intentionally include cis and trans women, as well as non-binary, agender, or intersex people and other gender minorities. Okay, so who are we? The cmd-f team is part of nwPlus, which is a club that runs nwHacks, UBC Local Hack Day, but rebranded Hack Camp, and cmd-f. cmd-f is British Columbia's largest all-women hackathon established in 2019. We value learning, building confidence, and women supporting women. Leading up to cmd-f, the team is hosting a series of workshops and events as part of the cmd-f countdown phases. So this is the cmd-f team. A quick introduction. We have Joyce, who is our logistics director. We have Christy, who is a cmd-f coordinator. Steffi, also cmd-f coordinator, and myself, shooting. So now let me run through how the panel is structured. The panel is split into 3 roughly 30-minute blocks. We'll kick it off first with pre-submitted questions. These are the questions we've collected from you that you submitted during your registration. And following this, the primary question period will be live. So we'll be using Slido, which is an interactive Q&A software where you can submit and upvote your favorite questions on the queue to bump up its priority. It can all be done anonymously, so feel free, if you're comfortable, to send whatever you'd like. That's appropriate. We sent the link out to you in our pre-event email. So I know many of you have already joined the Slido room and have been submitting and upvoting questions. If you haven't yet, fear not. One of the cmd-f members, Christy, she will be dropping the link in the Zoom chat, so you can join anytime, or you can scan the QR code on your screen and you'll be whizzed directly there. Finally, to wrap up the Q&A session, we invite participants who are comfortable with doing so to directly use the raise hands function on Zoom to ask the speakers any last-minute questions. I will be sending out a poll around the 1 hour mark to see how many people are comfortable with doing that. If not, we can extend the Slido. And next, the panel will conclude around 7 p.m. Pacific time. The cherry on top will be for you to meet your fellow women in tech, which are all participants here tonight. We know going into the virtual semester this year may make you feel disconnected, and it's really hard to meet people through Zoom lectures. Additionally, everyone here is united by their passion for gender diversity in STEM, so I believe we can all make friends of each other. So we'll be hopping off Zoom onto Glimpse, which is a new powerful virtual connectivity app. So how will it look and what can you expect? You'll be randomly paired into 3-minute speed networking sessions, and Glimpse will allow you to play mini games directly in your video calls, and you can also use their icebreakers or capture the memories with their photo booth. Yeah, you can easily connect afterwards with social media or anything. The pair matching will go live after the panel, but you can join through the link Christy sent in the chat anytime, but we'll unlock it after. So now, at last, let's introduce our speakers. They're tuning in from all across North America. First, I'd like to introduce our host, Caitlin Stanton. She'll be asking the 2 panelists your questions and guiding the discussions tonight. Caitlin Stanton is a recent graduate of Cornell University and a current master's student in electrical and computer engineering. On campus, she was the founding president of UBC Chapter of Engineering Sorority in Alpha Omega Epsilon, and is currently an executive board member for the Women in Computing at Cornell, a teaching assistant for the ECE department, and a researcher for the Collective Embodied Intelligence Lab. She interned at places including Microsoft and Qualcomm, and was most recently a hardware engineering intern at Lyft Level 5 in their autonomous vehicle division. She's an advocate for diversity in tech through her public speaking and social media initiatives, and thoroughly enjoys opening up all kinds of students to the power of technology. I'm very honored and grateful to have met and conversed with all 3 of our speakers in preparation for the event. They're driven, resilient, and unified by their passion for diversity and inclusion. I'll now be passing on the mic to our host, Caitlin, to formally introduce our two panelists and start off the event. So everyone virtually welcome Caitlin.
Thank you for that amazing intro, and thank you for the virtual round of applause. I'm super excited to be here and be moderating this event. So I'll first introduce our speakers and then we'll get started. So we have Governess Simpson. From being lost and uncertain of her career prospects and struggling with maintaining her own mental health, to interning at Microsoft as a program manager and being accepted into programs from top tech companies, Governess's path to becoming a leader in technology has been far from linear. Governess Simpson is a fourth-year student at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, majoring in industrial and systems engineering with a minor in computer science. Outside of being heavily involved in extracurriculars on campus, such as student government and her engineering fraternity, she also works as a private online instructor to teach and bring computer science to students across the United States. In her free time, Governess enjoys powerlifting, working on side projects, and promoting physical and mental wellness within her community. She is also passionate about improving representation and accessibility to tech. So welcome, Governess. And then next, we have Fariba Haddadi. Fariba Haddadi is a technical program manager at Microsoft, a customer-facing role within one of Microsoft's analytics product teams. She has a PhD of computer science focused on leveraging AI and machine learning to solve cybersecurity problems. She has a very diverse background working as a data scientist and an AI solution architect in various industries from telecommunications, manufacturing, and retail to financial institutions. Passionate about data science and solving business problems with data, she believes there is no limit in how data can be leveraged in industries to help them grow their business. So thank you for joining us, Fariba.
Hey, everyone.
And so just a quick reminder, this first section will be a structured Q&A, but if you have any questions, go to the Slido. They sent the link in the chat, and also you can use the QR code. But with that, we're going to get started. So first question for our panelists, and feel free, Governess or Fariba, whoever feels most comfortable answering first, feel free to jump in. First question is, what motivated you to pursue your career path? And how did you know that's what you wanted to specialize in?
Well, to be honest, from the beginning, I didn't really plan for this. I think when I was a master's student, there was no field called data science back then. I just knew that I love math and that I liked data structures. SQL database was my favorite course. And those are all the things that really got me interested into getting a PhD using machine learning and data analytics. And honestly, when I started my PhD, I wasn't really going for machine learning or AI. And it happened to be my research project, which I had a scholarship at, and I had to use those approaches for my cybersecurity problems. So I would say just every year you think about what are the new skills you have, and with the maybe the things that you have tried so far, what is the thing that you like to continue working on or then planning for moving ahead. That's how it happened for me. So from my PhD, I got my first data science job, and from there I knew I wanted to do maybe more of customer facing type of roles and not really be in a cubic all day writing code. So I kind of started training myself to get where I am. And I don't know if where I am right now is the perfect place to be. So for me, it's always to be, okay, see what works and what not. And then from there, plan to go into another maybe field or another position in a year coming. So it's just really being actively planning for what you want to do next. And I don't know what I will be in maybe a few years now.
Yeah, I honestly share a lot of similar sentiments to what Fariba has talked about. I didn't really plan or anticipate that I'd be going into software development. I was going to go to school as a vocal performance major, out of all things, because that was what I wanted at the time. When I was in high school, I didn't really see a lot of representation of women like me in STEM fields, and it never seemed as a very alluring thing at the time. And so it wasn't until I started getting feedback from my friends and my professors and my family saying, you know, you're actually really good at math and science, you can pursue this field, that I even considered it. And even when I got into the field, I came in as chemical engineering. That didn't last very long. And so we ended up I switched majors like 6 or 7 times throughout my entire career, because I was still trying to figure out what was important to me. Where do I want to end up? Where do I want to make an impact? And that was something that took years to figure. That was not something that I came in knowing. And I kind of ended up just falling into tech. I took a C++ class. It's the first language that I learned, and that was challenging. I mean, I never done anything related to comp sci before. I didn't even know what computer science was at the time. And I took the class, and it was challenging and it was frustrating, and I loved it. Because of that, it allowed me to explore a completely different side of myself and really push myself to do better. And so I just took a leap of faith, and I was like, you know what? This is something that I like to do. I enjoy the challenge, and I'm going to pursue it. And so I didn't really know that I end up into software development. I started off in research, and VR, and seeing the implications of that with infrastructure and architecture. I explored that for a little while. And then from there, I jumped into, where was it? Like mobile development for a while. I thought I was going to be the next like iOS app developer of the world. Thought I'd make like, the money winning app. And then I explored program management recently. And now I'm going back into software engineering. So the path for me was not linear by any means, but I guess what kind of motivated me was really just following my gut and listening to what I wanted and what I felt was important to me at the time. And it's worked out pretty well.
I think that's honestly really intriguing because a lot of my friends, when they think of tech or people in tech, they think of someone who, I don't know, at age like 10 was like, I'm going to be a computer scientist, went into college studying computer science, like graduated, went and worked at a big tech company. Like they kind of knew what they wanted the entire time. But both of you are kind of saying the same thing where it's like, you had to try a lot of things out. You had to go with your gut. Sometimes your gut was right, sometimes it was wrong, but you just had to follow that path. And you kind of, I like how you phrased it, Governess, you kind of like fell into tech. And I, at least in my opinion, I think that makes your experience as a technologist even more well-rounded, just because you get to bring that like interdisciplinary nature, or at least that like additional background of other technical and non-technical skills behind you, so that when you do go into like the CS industry or even like a non-technical industry, you still have that like varied perspective, which I think is really interesting. So even if you aren't a CS major, you can still do CS, is essentially what I'm taking away from both of your answers, which is awesome. So kind of along the same veins of studying computer science and studying tech, both of you pursued / are pursuing like technical STEM degrees. So how did you / are you overcoming the anxiety and stress that accompanies working towards a STEM?
I guess I can talk about that first, because I'm currently in college right now, and we're feeling it like right now. Like I'm in the kitchen, and the kitchen is hot. So that has been something I can talk about. So for me, I think the first step is just acknowledging that it's normal and that it's happening. I know that there can be times where maybe you feel as though I shouldn't be stressed out, or you have this feeling where you shouldn't be feeling the way that you are. And I want to say right now that, what we're doing, STEM majors, whatever it is a hard thing to do, to be taking the classes that we're taking, to be on the path that we're on right now. And I think that's important to recognize, is that we're going to hit those bumps in the road. And when I'm feeling anxious, I usually have a few tried and true tips that work for me. Is one, I say rallying the troops, whether that be with my friends or my family or, my professors, just making sure that I have a community of people who I trust and, I can confide to about things that are going on, and I can kind of debrief with those type of issues. And, if you have that community or not, it's going to come over time. I certainly didn't have that community coming in, and it took years to develop. So don't ever feel like, oh, I don't have enough people to talk to or confide to. That comes with time. And then another thing for me is really recognizing where my limits are and when I need to take a step back and take care of myself. There's this thing where people always talk about, oh, you can either have sleep, or you can have good grades, or you can have, social life. And I don't really believe in that. I don't believe in that you have to be sacrificing your soul and your sanity for the work that you're doing. I don't think that's sustainable in the long run. I think that I'm a huge advocate for not only physical health, because I do compete in sports, but also the mental health that goes with it, is that you will not perform your best work if you don't take care of yourself. And so there have been so many times, when I was so overwhelmed about whatever I was working on, and I had to reach out to my professor saying, hey, you know what? I need to take a step back. I might need an extension on something, or, I would need to reschedule a meeting. And it sucks to do that. Nobody likes to feel as though they're being, a burden, or like affecting somebody else's schedule. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to, is this something that's sustainable? No, it's not. I'm struggling right now, so I need to take the steps to take care of myself. And then we'll handle all the other issues. Rescheduling a meeting, we can reschedule a meeting. I can turn in an assignment a few days later, and have that flexibility. So for me, the biggest thing is just knowing where you are at and taking care of yourself, because that's going to come first.
Well, so I couldn't agree really more with that. Take care of yourself first. But I think there are a few things to recognize. Is just what you can do, and you always want to do your best, but your best is very different compared to other people's best, because your background is different, and then your challenges are going to be different. So at some point in your career or your education life, you feel like this is something I can do. Maybe I can work from 8 a.m. until midnight. I want to hand out the perfect assignments that I can. I want to do this and that. And then at some point in your life, you think you are no longer able to do that. It's just for me, it's really important to understand what you can do at the point in time and what you are capable of. So there were times I have been working maybe more than I should, but I was fine with it because I thought I can do it. That's what gives me the good feeling of I'm doing all I can to really reach into the place I want. And then at some point I said, okay, maybe my priorities are changed. So the same challenge will be handled differently for me now compared to what I have been doing maybe a couple of years ago. So just really being aware of what you can do, and you always will do your best. And one of the other things that came really to me is just really don't compare yourself, and just focus on yourself. Don't compare your career, your goals with someone that is maybe 5 years ahead of you. Don't put that stress on top of what you are dealing with. Just feel about and plan about what you want to get at based on your skills and what you are capable of doing, and then you will get there. So you won't be the same as someone else is. Maybe someone else will like be in a different career in a couple of years. You will be in a different path because you have different skills. Don't add that additional stress comparing yourself to someone else, and just focus on the best you can do. The rest, I think, is just really being happy with what you do. You will be happy with your career as well, with your maybe education goals and whatever you're planning to do. So just plan based on your skill sets, your strength, and your capabilities, and forget about everything else, I would say.
I hope everybody was taking notes on that one, because that's some incredible pieces of advice. I think what I took away from that is just the emphasis on yourself, like making sure that you're pursuing your own goals, that you're taking care of yourself physically and mentally, that you have your own support system. Like all of these in combination will help reduce any anxieties or stresses, both in the school environment and then also in the workplace. Like it's good to make sure that you're constantly taking care of yourself, that you're reevaluating your goals, that you have friends and family to turn to, especially now with everything being virtual. So everything is even more stressful than before. But yeah, that was incredible pieces of advice. So thank you. So kind of changing gears a little bit. It's no surprise that tech is definitely a place that definitely lacks diversity, especially gender diversity. So I'm making the assumption that you've probably dealt with sexism and like mansplaining in the workplace and at school. And so I kind of want to learn a little bit more about those situations that you have dealt with that and how you've overcome them, or how do you combat those?
I can go first on that. I think um, the first thing we all have to do is just to acknowledge that there is an issue. And we all know that there is an issue in the tech industry, specifically, maybe if you are in computer science or type of engineering roles, that's an issue. And first, we should acknowledge that this is an issue. We should do whatever we can to fix it, but then we shouldn't really give it too much power. It's just like things will happen, but the one thing we can do is really work on our self confidence. And then from there, if things happen, you won't really take it too personally. It won't really impact you in a way that may impact others, because you know where you're coming from. If someone else is doing or having a like not acceptable behavior, that's on them, but it won't really bother you that much. You know there is an issue, you're aware of that, you're not giving it too much power, and you're doing what you can do to just to get where you want to really go. If people are really mansplaining or being sexist, um, I think the one thing we can do is just not ignore it, but ignore it maybe proactively, thinking that I'm not ignoring it just because I can't do anything about it. I'm ignoring it because it's on that person or that environment. And then I'm doing my part as a woman in this community to help other women to help resolve this situation. But other than that, this is not something personal. So it shouldn't really be impacting me personally. And the more we work on our own power, thinking I am more confident going out in a room full of men, I am confident enough to take a new role that maybe is male dominant. I am confident enough to get what I want. Then the rest is just really working through the situations and doing the best you can do to overcome like whatever the challenge would be for you.
Yeah, that was extremely well said. I guess there's one part I want to touch on a little bit more, but kind of adding on to what was mentioned, I think it's important to kind of build that self-confidence and also kind of develop a bit of a thicker skin. And this isn't just in tech, it's just kind of in the workplace in general, is that somebody's going to have something to say about anything that you do. You do something that's right, they have something to say. You do something wrong, they have something to say. And so at the end of the day, you can only do what you believe is right because someone's going to talk about it regardless. I tend to live my life that way, and we've gotten this far. So but I really want to touch on the point of reclaiming your power. I think that was a really, really strong point to touch on, is that we have to remember that, especially as women in STEM, and even more so with the additional identities that you have and the intersectionality between that, is that we are breaking new ground. Like, we are entering into this space that is typically a white male dominated area, and we're getting those jobs and we're succeeding and we're getting those promotions. And that's such an empowering feeling. I think that we really need to take more to heart, because when I've heard those comments, things like mansplaining and sexist comments, I mean, that's pretty much on the weekly. The typical I'm in class. I remember one time I was in a physics class and we were in a group of 4 people and we were breaking up something for like a lab assignment. And you could just get the vibe of the people in the group. They didn't assign me as much work as everyone else, because under the notion of, I don't know if she's going to get as much done. And so we have to assign her a little bit less to kind of compensate for it. And so that can be really frustrating. And there's a lot of like micro and macro aggressions of that scale. But for me, it's almost not quite encouraging, but almost like it reaffirms the idea that yes, I do belong here, and yes, the work that I'm doing is important, because whenever we're breaking the status quo or we're doing something new, we're going to ruffle a little bit of feathers. And I think that's a very important aspect of not to be discouraged by that. And it's unfortunate that that's occurring, and we should definitely be making the change so that does not exist at all. And that can also be used as a way to continue to motivate us to continue to uplift other women. That's a huge point Fariba brought up that I highly encourage, is that, you know, we're not competing with each other for the same spots. We're all in this together, trying to break into this field. And I think that we build that support system so that we know we can confide in each other in those types of situations. So.
Yeah, I honestly really love that phrase, reclaiming your power. That just made me think that, like, we're all extremely powerful, like women and underrepresented minorities in STEM, and the people who are mansplaining are just kind of afraid, you know. That's the reason that they're bringing you down, is because they're afraid of having such powerful people come into their school classroom or coming into their work environment. So yeah, like as Governess said, you're going to ruffle some feathers. I think that's a really great point of view to have, that like you're never going to make everybody 100% happy. The main focus is making sure that you feel satisfied with what you're doing at the end of the day. It's all about you, you know. You're the one who has to live with yourself. You're the one who has to live with your goals, to make decisions that you feel satisfied with. That's awesome. So I think, at least for me in my STEM journey, I haven't gone alone. I think Governess touched a little bit about communities to lean on. But something that's popped up a lot in terms of like breaking into the engineering field is like finding a mentor. So I kind of wanted to ask a little bit about if either of you have mentors in your life, and if so, how did you come about acquiring them in the first place?
Yeah, I can touch on this first. So I do have mentors, many mentors who could, for different things and for different reasons. Some of them I have acquired through different groups or fellowships that I'm in, and they have those mentor matching programs, and that is an extremely great resource that helps kind of make the process easier. But then there are other cases where I didn't have those resources, and I had to actually go out of my way to find those mentors and to establish that relationship. And there are a few steps I like to take in order to do so. The first thing is just know what your expectations are out of that relationship with the mentor that you're seeking. So if you want to be you want somebody to mentor you, what exactly do you want to get out of them? And then also, like, what can you provide that mentor as well? We tend to think of mentor and mentee relationships as a one way, the mentor is teaching the mentee everything. And I think we can reshift our focus on that and think that each of us are providing something for both parties. So it shouldn't be just you're taking and you're not providing. So one, setting those expectations. Are they there to provide career advice and those prospects? Are they there just to help you, like, you know, you can brainstorm your ideas to, or are they there for interview prep? It's kind of good to narrow down what you're looking for. And then I think the most important thing to realize is that they're also human. They have had mentors before. They have been in the same shoes that we have. I know it can be a little bit intimidating reaching out to somebody who may be in a role that you want, or maybe a role that like you desire to be in someday. And it can be a bit nervous, and, you know, maybe there's that power dynamic, but I always try to ground it in a sense of they've been in those shoes, they've been in our shoes before. And it's important for us to kind of to talk about that, because that's something relatable we can all kind of pull from. And so, yeah.
Nice. So I would say, like, being an introvert, I haven't really always been good to make friends and go out of my comfort zone. But what worked for me in like this area is just really understand what I need personally from someone, and then looking out for someone that can help me with that, but just not really call it a mentor and mentee type of a relationship. Because, like, right now I can say maybe I'm helping a few people, like mentoring them if you like, but really if you build some type of a relationship with someone, uh, beyond just really asking questions and asking for guidance, then that would be a very useful type of a mentorship relationship, because you're not really asking questions and popping here, like here and there to ask something and ask for specific questions, but you are learning from how they're working, how they're living their life and their career life along with whatever they're doing. So really starts from yourself. It just understand what you want to do, what is the thing that you want to learn. If it's something that you know you don't have in your skill set and that's what you're looking for a mentor for, then be very specific about what you want and then go really beyond that. I don't like really when people talk about LinkedIn network and all of those. I don't really like to think about my network as people in the career path who I met and then maybe I like to keep the relationship with them so that in future we can help each other in our career paths. I like to really think about them as career friends and just give more depth into our relationship. It doesn't really necessarily have to be friendship, but it's just more than just casually knowing someone. So that's what I like really to do with my maybe network and my mentors. Not really think about, okay, this is someone who I will go into and ask a couple of questions, very specific, but someone that will be along and I will watch uh, like how they like live their career, how they like deal with their challenges, and having that type of a relationship with them. That's actually what works for me. Maybe that's just because I don't have a very broad network of people and mentors, and the ones that I have, I try to really build that type of a relationship with them. But that's really what works for me.
I love that term, career friends. Yeah, a couple people have mentioned it in the chat. Yeah, I think mentorship is something that it's what you make of it, what you want to get out of it. So whether it's like a more structured kind of like, hi, I want to reach out to you specifically for this, kind of pick your brain on these topics, like that's great. But if you want to have a more like amorphous kind of like both sides giving, both sides taking kind of relationship, like that also works too. But yeah, I think what Carmen said in the chat about making sure that you recognize that everybody is human, I think is really critical, especially when it comes to people's time and energy. Because sometimes there are a lot of people who want to be mentors, there are a lot of people who want to be mentees, but it's hard to put that much time and effort into a connection, especially when it's especially when it's a new person. So with that, we're going to transition a little bit to Slido questions. So if you have not been checking already, the link is in the Zoom chat. So feel free to add your questions or vote other people's questions up. You can also ask anonymously, but definitely encourage you to ask with your name, feel comfortable. So I'll just go from like the most top voted questions downward, and hopefully we'll get through as many as we can. So currently the top question is, how do you deal with feeling inadequate in your career journey, and what keeps you grounded along the way?
That's a tough one. Like it really depends on your personality. I have always been told to be a perfectionist, and I've learned that maybe people who work with data and analyze data tend to have that type of a uh, characteristic. Uh, so it's just I always want something, and I always feel like I don't know like something, and there is a huge list of things I should know and that I don't know. And I don't remember a time that I felt like, okay, I'm good. I know everything I wanted to know, and I'm good with everything I'm doing. Like it never happened to me. I don't know about the rest of you. The one thing that really helped me was to have maybe a list of things I want to do and I want to learn, and I feel I have to learn, and I feel like I'm not enough in those aspects, and just prioritize them and put that in my goal. Like if it's with my manager, if it's with my professor at university, like asking for the things I want to learn, and like bringing some like putting some time aside to do what I think I need to do, so that that feeling of, oh, I'm very behind in all of the things that I know and I won't really get where I want to be maybe in a few years. So it just that helps a lot. But then I know that I always will have a long list of things. So knowing that about myself and my personality, I think I will be like, I feel like that should be okay. And so many people have told me, like, your 100% is more than enough. Like, your 80% is more than enough for so many people. So don't think that you have to be like at this level to be able to do this job. Like, when I work with my customers, if I don't know something, I put some extra hours to learn all the aspects of what they will be asking me and how I can help them, feeling that I should know all the answers. And like, always, all of my managers have given me this feedback that that's okay. You know more than you should. And like, compared to the people you are going to meet, like, you you are more than they would expect. So don't really put that much pressure on yourself. But again, it's something like a personality thing, and I have just learned to be how to deal with it, and hopefully we'll get better and better in dealing with myself.
Yeah, no, that is a tough question to answer. And I honestly learned so much just from you talking about like your experiences for Reba. So thank you. For me, I think it's a very similar process. For me, the first thing I always like to make sure I acknowledge and normalize the feeling, because I think if you can't normalize and accept that this is like a normal thing that's happening and that it's occurring, then you can't really take the steps to help improve it. So that's step number one, is like, if you're feeling inadequate, or you're feeling maybe you're not good enough, or you're feeling just nervous in a space, that is completely normal, and it's okay to feel that way. I feel that way all the time. I felt that like in an hour ago when I did a technical interview. It's totally normal, and you know, we experience that, and that's okay. I think the second part with that then is, and as was touched on before, is how can we make it a learning moment? How can we take this feeling that we have and turn it into something productive? Which I think is a very important thing, because okay, we feel inadequate about, so maybe we're not as good as a certain language on something. How can we turn that into, okay, how is this a learning period for me? Maybe I can go and learn this particular language a bit more. Or even better, like maybe you feel inadequate to a particular person. I think that's another important thing that we need to touch on, especially as women in STEM. It's very, I mean, they other people pit us against other people. I can't even imagine, even in high school, there was a girl who was majored in STEM, and she was also a Black woman, and my counselor would compare me to her every single step of the way, even though she would call me her name, and her and I didn't even look like each other, but she would say, hey, that person's name, and I'm like, I'm not that person, that she graduated 3 years ago. So people are already making comparisons, and that doesn't mean that we have to. And so maybe there's somebody who is really, really good at SQL, and they're just amazing at it, and they're crushing the game and they're killing it. Okay, so rather we have that a feeling of animosity and jealousy and envy, how can we transition those emotions to being something of inspiration and motivation and, you know, friendly competition? How can maybe I can connect with that person and saying, hey, you're really good at this skill. How can I be better? How did you get to where you are now? And how can I get to that point? I think it's important to it's important to feel and experience that inadequacy. At the same time, we don't want to dwell in it. We don't want to sit in that emotion. We want to eventually take it and use that to propel us to where we need to go, to level up and to be in a better place.
Yes. Oh my God. The keeping in mind like the growth mindset that whatever knowledge you have can only be increased. You know, you don't have like a fixed amount of capability is super important. Especially in tech, because I feel like everybody around us tends to have like these amazing resumes, right? They work in huge tech companies, they have straight A's, you know, just like unachievable levels of performance. But behind all of those accomplishments are just tons and tons of failures and mistakes and missteps. And it's just normalizing the fact that that's going to happen. Everybody makes mistakes, as Hannah Montana says. And then just taking those moments and growing from them, right? Like whether it's growing as a person, as an engineer, as a professional, whatever. Because yeah, those are just learning moments, and your whole life is just a series of learning moments. So I think both those answers were incredible. So thank you so much for sharing. Especially since that is a very large and vague question, and obviously a constant work in progress. But yeah, so moving on to the next question. When starting out in your career or anything new, what did you do to allow yourself to be a beginner and not to get discouraged or overwhelmed right away?
Yeah, I can start off with this one. So for me, how I allowed myself to be a beginner was I allowed myself to fail and to give myself grace in the fact that I am not going to be perfect at what I'm doing right away. As I mentioned before, I started off in C++. I am not good. I was not good, and I'm currently not good at C++. That was something that I struggle with. And with each language that I learned or each technology or software that I got into, you always have a starting point of ground zero where you don't have any knowledge of it, and then from there you then expand on it. It's so easy to look at someone who's maybe been coding for years and they're a master at what they're doing, but we have to remember that they've been doing that for years. We're at the beginning point, and we have to allow ourselves that grace to say, okay, I'm just beginning and it's going to be normal to fail. I think that I learned so much more from my failures and when things don't go the way I want than when I'm successful and when things do go the way I want. I think that is a more humbling experience where I can take how I'm feeling, the frustration, the disappointment, the anger, and then as we talked about, transition that into a more productive feelings of how we can use that to be better and to progress my own growth and learning. And it can be hard to get discouraged about it. I mean, nobody really likes to fail, of course. It's easier said than done. Oh, just fail all the way. But especially since we tie our worth and our esteem to our work and our profession, I think it's really hard to do that at times, which kind of falls into that compassion that you have for yourself, and that as long as you are doing the best that you can in the moment where we are, that's good enough for you. And then that's where we kind of stand. And that's been something I've been working on a lot, is that I've been trying to have a lot more self-compassion, because it's so easy to set a standard, an impossible standard for yourself to be at a certain point. And sometimes we just have to be reasonable and be like, okay, if I am not good at Python at day 0, I'm not going to be a master at it by day 10. It's going to be a lot more of a gradual shift and progression in it. And so I think, in summary, I think the most important thing is recognizing where you are, being okay and comfortable with failure, and then using that failure to develop it as in whatever way you see fit.
I love it, recognizing where you are. So it's again one of those tough ones, because really it's all about you knowing yourself and then where you are at. Plan for what you want to do, and then for whatever new you are trying to do, you will be a beginner at some point. So just be aware of where you are at. Never try to, I'm guilty of that, so I can't say I never have done that, but try not to compare your stage 0 with stage 10 of someone. Just be aware of that, so that you're taking it easier on yourself. And then one other thing I like to say is just really be aware of who you are. I would say there are things I like to learn, and they are on my list of things to do and my goals. But then I know, because of the way I work and because of the way I prefer to handle stuff, I may not be 100% on that specific thing. So I would just give an example of myself. Like, I'm an introvert, so I'm not so social. And if I wanted to magic like businesswoman and businessmen, I won't really be able to do that. Like, I can try to get better, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just really having that as one of my things to learn. But I know, because of who I am and because of what I do, maybe 90% of my time as like the work I do, I can't really be like someone who is born to do things like that, who is born to do like networking, and who is born to like be an easier person around people. So it just really I can really try to do what I want, be aware of that I'm a beginner, but also be aware of who you are and like what you can do, what is your personality, and that even maybe in 1 year or 2 years, you won't still be at stage 10 like someone else has, because you are two different people. And like the same thing, they won't really be like you in the things you are great. So if I'm really good in focusing on stuff and focusing on data crunching and dealing with data and algorithms, I know that someone who is dealing with more business aspects of the things won't be as good as me in things like that. So whenever I'm really frustrated and I have it with like this kind of a network with some of my friends that are really like me, when I get frustrated with myself and not being enough in the things that I want to do, I always say we are the doers and they are the talkers. So I just feel better because I do the actual things and they do all the talking. That's fine. I like to know how to talk like them, but maybe they also like to know how to do actual stuff like me. So it just, I try to make fun of it, but really it's all about knowing who you are, what you are capable of. You do your best, but you may always be at a stage that you don't, you, like compared to someone else, is lower than what you expect to be. So that's fine.
I really like the note of not comparing your own first stage to someone else's stage 10, just because everybody's path, nobody's path is the same. Nobody's path is perfectly linear. There's always going to be missteps, twists, and turns along the way. But yeah, as long as you stay true to yourself and true to your goals and true to what you actually want to accomplish, and acknowledge the fact that you have your own weaknesses and strengths, you'll eventually get to that point where you're at that stage 10 for yourself. And I think keeping your eyes on that prize rather than focusing on what other people are doing is really important. Like my mom always used to tell me when I did swimming to not focus on the people in the other lanes, right? Because that'll only slow you down. And I think that kind of applies here, where it's like, if you have a goal, don't compare yourself to other people and their path to achieving that goal just because they're not you at the end of the day. Awesome. And then I love on the Slido, there's just been some like leaderboard movement of questions, which is awesome. Definitely keep them coming. Definitely keep upvoting questions that you enjoy. So we'll move on to the next one. How do you deal with microaggressions and educating your male friends that may not understand the particular struggle of being a woman in STEM?
I don't know why you're asking all the tough questions. I have been in so many panels, but the questions were much easier. So this is just really, if I have to start, I have to start with my husband. It's just really, whenever I talk about the diversity issue, the difficulties we have in our workplace and all of that, he is like, no, but I see more women. Like whenever I go out, and said, what do you mean? You mean when you go out to supermarkets or like to shops? That's not what I'm talking about. And like, I never could have convinced him that like this is an issue, because his mindset is like, there is no difference. So why do you see it? And I think for so many of them, like my husband, they don't, that's not their issue. So they don't really notice what's going on. And if even in situations they give comments about like a woman, most of them, I would like to think like that at least, they do that without any purpose. Maybe that's how they are, like grew up among their friends, and that the comments they make are just normal comments. Or maybe the way they have been within the family. So my husband has 3 sisters and powerful sisters. So he never think about women having less power, just because the way he grew up, it was just like, sisters are more powerful than brothers. And that's always what he said, no, that's not true. But really, it just really is about understanding why and how and where they are having those maybe questionable type of behaviors. And the way that, like, something that really interested me was that, like, my male peers always correct themselves, just then usually there is no need for me to interrupt and comment saying something, because there is someone else that is out there, like noticing the comment, the inappropriate comment, and then like giving that feedback of, oh, I think that happened. I think so many of the organizations are actively teaching their employees to be those male, like in the environment, that will give the feedback to their male peers about inappropriate behavior, just because uh, they understand each other and the way they communicate. If like, I had like a few instances of saying people like, you made an inappropriate comment here and there, but then uh, when I say it, they really want to get defensive about, oh no, I didn't mean it. But when someone else is like themselves say, they said, oh, I did something wrong because someone like me noticed that something was wrong. So I really like to think that people are getting more educated to do that. But when it comes to situations when it happens, something wrong happens to me, or I hear an inappropriate comment, what I like to say is just really making a joke out of it, saying that, did you really mean that? Did you make fun of me like that? I think I had situations where I pronounced a name of a car wrong, or I'm not a like car brand person. I don't know these stuff. So I called the car something and it was something else, and that was fine, but it was something serious to my peers, male peers, and they corrected me, and I said, okay, I don't care, but the way you made fun of me, it just wasn't really cool. And then we were all okay, because I knew that he was not really meaning it in a way that I maybe received it, but just making him be aware of what he did uh, for the next time was something I did. But yeah, I think that's all.
Yes, no, you just dropped so many nuggets of knowledge and gold right there. It just feels like me following after you is a crime. Uh, I'm sitting here like writing notes about what am I going to say? How am I going to sound as smart? So for me, that is, I think that, that question's a lot more complicated than what it leads on, which is a good thing. It's a good thing that we're touching on these more difficult subjects. I will say two things. There are two main rules that I like to live by when it comes to these issues, and then we can kind of dissect that a bit. Rule number one is that you cannot force change onto somebody. You can influence change, but you cannot force change. And there's a difference between that, and we can talk about that. And the second thing is that you are not responsible for teaching or educating people on these issues. That is just, you're not responsible for that role. I think I learned that the hard way through what was happening through the summer and a lot of the racial tensions there, and it just kind of made me realize that I am not the person who's going to be dismantling racism. I'm not going to be the person dismantling sexism. It is not, if I load it all onto me, I'm not going to survive. So don't ever feel that you are obligated to do so. I know that that can be a really struggling feeling to sit. Well, it's like, oh, if I don't teach this person, then who will type of feeling. And I completely get that, but don't ever feel pressured or to exhaust your mental energy on people. If people want to be trash, let them sit in their own trash. So, okay, all those disclaimers out of the way. Now let's actually get into it. So for me, when I experience those things, I think it really depends on how you choose to address those issues. I tend to have a lot more confrontational style when it comes to conflict. And so when somebody says something that's just dumb or just like not true, or something that is intentional or unintentionally can be hurtful, I tend to just address that head on, saying, okay, that was problematic. Let's talk about it, and break it down. And that may not be in. You have to kind of cater your approach to how that situation goes. Is that if you feel comfortable addressing that head on, then feel free to take that space and to do so. There may be spaces where maybe there's a power dynamic. Maybe you have a boss who's like making those comments, and maybe being confrontational is not that simple. And I totally get that. It really depends on the environment that you're in. And so I would say find the resources where you can have those conversations if you want to, whether that be HR or through, other employees or other, your comrades or your teammates, just finding those spaces where you can talk about those things. I think it's important, because at the end of the day, if somebody's making the comments that they're making, is just promoting the idea of, or promoting an idea of how women are in the workplace, or how they show up in the space. And that is a group effort of us trying to combat that and kind of deal with that. And it is really unfortunate that we have to deal with those situations. It's never really the ideal or the norm. But one final tip that I kind of learned, I think I found it on Facebook somewhere, where it's like, if somebody says something that's really like sexist or dumb or just kind of commentary, you just kind of act dumb and say like, oh, what do you mean by that? Oh, can you explain the joke? Let them explain the joke, and then let them sound stupid as they're trying to explain a sexist or an inappropriate joke to you, and then let them kind of stutter on their words. I'm a huge fan of I love letting people learn, letting people mess up, letting them grow. And so if that's what it takes for them to reach that point, then I think that's what we have to do. So.
Yeah, those are both amazing nuggets of advice. Yeah, I think it's definitely important to recognize that like people come from different backgrounds. So sometimes they say things that are intentionally bad, and like those are definitely problematic, but there's also unconscious biases. So like just stereotypes that happen to come across in their speech and actions, and calling those people out is very important, because it starts that process of unlearning, right? And then it also proves to you, if they decide to take on that path of unlearning, then they are people that deserve to be in your life, right? Like you don't want that negativity. So if they don't decide to listen to your suggestions or recognize the fact that what they said is problematic, then like cut that toxicity out of your life. But yeah, it is really unfortunate that the people who end up being some of the most oppressed communities end up having to kind of teach the oppressors how to not discriminate, how to not have microaggressions against other people. So yeah, I think what Governess said is very important. Make sure that like you're still taking care of yourself, because you're not going to solve the problem by yourself. So it's not worth it to put that emotional burden on your shoulders. So yeah, at the end of the day, take care of yourself physically and mentally, while also making sure that other people can learn from their mistakes and grow. So a little bit of an easier question than that. I know I've been throwing some tough ones at you, but I love the fact that you've both been handling those questions really well, and giving extraordinary answers. So who are some of your biggest women role models in STEM, and how have they inspired you in your career?
Yeah, I can hop on that. For me, it's my mom. It's fair, and I can talk about that. For me, it's an answer that seems so obvious now that I say it, but at the time I didn't even think about it, because I touched on before how I didn't feel as though I had many public women role models in STEM when I was growing up. You have, famous celebrities and people and textbooks, who promote certain identities and, in the career field. I never really found a lot of women, let alone women of color, STEM or like computer scientists that were kind of in the media. And so it was hard for me to kind of emulate that. And then I took a step back and I'm like, wait, there's my mom. So for context, my mom, she immigrated here from Sierra Leone, Africa. And so she had to pick up the norms and the customs, and she always had a dream of becoming a nurse. And that was something she would tell me stories about playing with dolls and like just wanting to take care of people and supporting people. And I remember growing up, this is like a far memory, like in the back of my head, I didn't even think it was there. And I don't think she even remembered it, was when I was really young. My mom was still in school. So I was the youngest, and I have like a brother and a sister respectively, so there's 3 kids. And at the time, my mom was studying for her bachelor's to get a degree so she can like go into nursing and get that job. And I just remember I would be running around and I'd see like textbooks of statistics and like biochemistry and all these other things just kind of laying around. And because my mom, I never actually saw her studying, because she would be studying when we were in bed, but I'd see the textbooks kind of sitting around when she was studying. And it just, at the time, I remember looking through the textbooks and I'm like, wow, this is so challenge, so rough. Maybe that was the reason I didn't go into STEM at first, because I looked at the textbooks and I'm like, ooh, that's not for me. And now that I'm in the field now and I think about it, it's so inspiring, because whenever things are going really rough, or I'm having trouble with a class, or I'm starting to feel inadequate about my skills, I always think about, you know, how my mom was able to kind of overcome the odds. And she's a nurse now. She's actually a psychiatric nurse, and so she works with those types of patients. And thinking about the challenges she faced, and it always inspires me knowing that, you know, she was able to overcome it, and so I can too. And we can have those conversations now about her past and like how she worked in STEM. And I tell her about my classes, and she was like, "Wow, those classes are so hard. I couldn't do it." When in reality, she did do it. She doesn't want to admit that she did it, which it's so crazy. So yeah, she's just been such a big supporter in my life, and I'm very happy that her and I we had that connection that we share.
That's amazing to have someone like this in your life. Like when I look at like people out there, women in STEM, like there's so many of them, that I follow, that I like to know more about, but it's just really hard to know who did what and how they get where they are. So just really having someone like that as my role model has been really difficult for me. So the ones that I chose to look at are the ones that I have worked with or have been in university with at some point. The people who I know, like there are a couple of people from my PhD period which I know, like uh, we started our PhD at the same time. I kind of know which paths they took and where they are now, what are their challenges, and just knowing that how they overcome their challenges and how they get where they are, like actually make them type of kind of my role models. They might not be at the place that maybe some of those women are that we hear a lot about, like maybe I can't even remember her name, but um, like data science lead of Google. She's an amazing woman. I follow her, but I can't really relate to her. So I really choose to like maybe have those people in my mind, but focus on the people who I know, and I know how what are the challenges that they overcome, and like how they could really succeed in what they do. It makes it easier for me to understand maybe what I should also do and with my challenges. So yeah, those are not really big names out there, but those are the people who I can really relate to.
I think that's wonderful, honestly, that you both have role models within your life, people that you can turn to and look up to. Because honestly, that just really shows that like the people around you can be extraordinarily powerful and influencing you to do things and encouraging you to do things. And that just really shows the power of community and the power of like your support network. That's honestly beautiful to think about. And yeah, power to all the moms out there. Like my mom did something similar. She's getting her second master's degree. And I'm like, how do you, okay, sure. I'm like, how do you do it? I can't even handle getting a master's degree. You're getting a master's degree while working. Okay. But yeah, women are powerful, that is for sure. So I think we're going to send out a poll to see how comfortable people are with unmuting to ask questions live. But while people are filling out that poll, we're going to just take one more question from the Slido. So next question, how can you find ways to express your femininity in ways that are quote unquote appropriate in a professional setting without feeling that you have to present as androgynous?
Wow, like silence. Maybe you should switch to another type of questioning. These are all the tough ones. But seriously, I like it is just really doing what you feel comfortable and you feel it's you. Like if it's just presenting yourself with how you dress up and how you act, all those things that you feel really confident and really comfortable with what you do. And if you have that feeling, if you are confident and comfortable with what you do, like how you wear, how you talk, and all of those things, how you present yourself, then you don't really notice anything in that space. Then if you feel weird about yourself, the way you put yourself together, then you definitely will look other people's impressions of you. Do they think I'm weird or not? But if you feel you are okay, you are confident about how you do it and how you present yourself, then you don't really notice if people will think anything of you, and that won't really bother you. But then there are things we all have learned to do that may not be like the way, like there are dress codes at work, and there are the way you can present yourself at a maybe work party and all of those things, and you try as a woman be more cautious about that. But just like for me, doing what I feel good about and being confident about makes me less stressed out when going out in like events and locations like that.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the question now, and I find the part that I kind of want to stick on is the how can you find ways to express your femininity? For me, the first thought that came into mind was there's not a way. You just are. If you should feel the confidence to be able to step into whatever space that you're working in and feel as though you can unapologetically be yourself within reason in the space. And feel as though you shouldn't have to like find certain ways. Oh, maybe I could like wear like a pencil skirt instead of like slacks, or oh, I should put like a flower in my hair, or type of things. I feel as though you should, if you are a certain level of femininity in whatever range on the spectrum that is, you should feel entirely comfortable in doing so. And I think that ties into the idea of picking a workspace where you feel as though you can be yourself, and making sure that wherever you're working, that's reflecting the values that you want and what you're looking for in a space. You should never feel as though you aren't able to be yourself, however that is, um, where you work. And I can give like a personal example of that. So I worked at a place like my freshman year. I was like an internship during the school year. And at the time I was really big into like the Afro scene. I just like got natural for like the first time. I was like going in my Afro hair, like loving it, feeling myself. My sister she's natural all the time. And so I'd see her hairstyles and I'm like, I don't know how you get your hair like that. I want my hair like that. And in that workspace, I would get comments from my manager, who people would give comments to him, and then he would give comments to me saying people are feeling a little bit uncomfortable about how you have your hair in the space, and they feel as though it's being distracting, yada yada yada, and maybe make some changes and things. Long story short, I did not stay in that role long for obvious reasons, but for me, it was one, how I hold my hair does not stop me from writing code. Like, your server is not going to fall down because my hair is in an afro versus flat ironed, first and foremost. And so when it comes to that question, it's so frustrating that we as women feel as though we aren't able to express ourselves to the fullest extent in the workplace that we are, and that's a huge thing. I almost don't want to be giving like particular ways to do it, because then that kind of feeds into the idea of we have to morph how we present ourselves in order to actually be comfortable and welcomed in the space. And I don't like that dialogue. I don't like that narrative. And so my short answer is making sure that you find places to work, whether that be internship or full-time, that allow you to be yourself unapologetically without having to walk on eggshells, or like worry about crossing the line with people. You should be surrounded by people who support you and however you choose to represent yourself.
That's honestly such a wonderful response. It's such a difficult question. Yeah, no, Governess, that sucks. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think something that a lot of companies say is that they want their employees to be authentic, but not every single workspace has the structure in place to allow people to be their authentic selves. So I think whether it's looking for a workspace, an academic environment, a club, whatever, making sure that it fits your values, that if you feel like you want to dress more conservatively or dress more modestly or dress more your own style, like whatever it is, that you have the opportunity to do so, I think is really important. So yeah, don't let anybody else's constraints hold you down if that's who you truly want to express yourself as. I think that's really important. So thank you all for voting in the poll to see whether you want to have some live questions. A couple people did say that they're comfortable raising their hands and unmuting to ask questions. So I'm going to give those people an opportunity to raise their hands in the participants function, and then I'll like call on them classroom style if they have a question to ask. So if anybody feels comfortable asking a live question now, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll just continue with the Slido question. Okay. So we'll just go with the next Slido question. And if you do want to ask a live question, just feel free to react on like that participants tab, and I'll call on you when we have a moment. So next question, how do you gain self-confidence? Another doozy.
Right. I can take that question. I can start off with that question. I think, so I don't think that there is a hard and fast rule on gaining self-confidence. I think that can vary on the person and what you're doing. It's not like, oh, look in the mirror 3 times, say you love yourself, bam, you have self-confidence. Like there's not a particular thing you can do with that. But I would say a general process that's worked for me is identifying areas of where you want to improve, or like setting goals for yourself with where you want to go with whatever aspect of, whether it's your career and a technical aspect, or maybe you just want to improve your relationships, or maybe you want to improve your finances. So setting those goals for yourself and then working towards those goals, of course, and kind of marking the milestones along the way. I think for me, I've kind of developed self-confidence by seeing myself inching toward a goal, seeing the milestones that I've made along the way, and acknowledging how in 4 months I'm in a completely different spot than where I was when I first started. It's the seeing the growth, seeing that I have morphed into some, whether it's a technical skill, or maybe it's like I have more money in my bank account, thank God. Having those different aspects of myself that I'm developing, and it's like recognizing I'm doing a job well done. I'm on pace for what I'm working on. And, that's going to come with it. You're not always going to make progress all the time. So you have to navigate through that feeling of, facing failure, which I know we talked about before. But for me, it's really recognizing that we're doing the best that we can. And when you get better at something, that can help improve your process. And there's so many other ways to do that. I'm sure there are so many different paths on how you can develop self-confidence, but that's one thing that I found works well for me. A more concrete example is that I didn't feel comfortable in coding interviews last year. I think I bombed every single one of my coding interviews last year. I didn't really know the format of it. I wasn't super confident with the data structures. It just was not something that I was really good at. And now, a year later, complete 180. Feels as though we're doing a lot more confident in those interviews. We're getting offers left and right, feeling as though I look back to where I was before, and now I'm like, they give me a question and I can nail it most of the time. I had an interview this morning that didn't quite go as well, but we regroup, we learn, and we grow. And so it's something like that where I can look and say, I am a stronger programmer, I am a better interviewer, I know my strengths and my weaknesses, and I can communicate and convey that clearly. And seeing that timeline of growth has just made me feel so much more comfortable in my skin and confident in that I can do anything, and that when I set my mind to it, that I can reach the goals that I set for myself. And that I don't think there's anything that's a bigger confidence booster than that.
I love it. So I think self-confidence is really a very, very personal thing. And it is really beyond what you do in your career, what you do in your education, like in all of that. It's all about you and how you do in your life. If you love yourself, and like with whatever body type and whatever maybe figure you are in, you love yourself. It's just, you have that feeling that you deserve love. it really extends to so many other things, including your career. It is just really like, I don't know if you have the same experience as me, but I have seen people, it's like, oh my God, that person is so dumb. But how could they be so confident? Like they even don't know 5% of the things that I know, but how can they talk like that? They know everything and they are like on top of the world on that field and all of those, because it's not about what they know and where they are in their career. It's just really about how they feel inside. And even if they know really little about something, they feel like they are accomplishing a lot. And that feeling that they have inside them is just will react and will present them in a way that they feel like, oh no, we are the best in this, whatever that this would be. If it's like they are, like, you have seen so many coaches, like yoga coaches, but they are not in their best shapes, but like this is what they do when they accept themselves in a way they are, and they are doing what they love to do, which is like teaching and training yoga. So that's what they do. Like so much of it is coming from inside and how you have learned to deal with yourself. And if you haven't done much work on yourself to accept yourself, that's the first thing you should like really focus on. And there are so many resources really getting close to women who um, are actually accepting themselves in a way they are, will teach you how to do it with yourself and how to be similar and be kind to your own body and your own mind. And then it comes to your career and education, like really recognizing how far you have come, not comparing yourself to everyone else, but just focusing on yourself and knowing that with planning and just being persistent, you will get where you want. So just be confident about what you know. And there is something you know 100%. So you are the queen and king in that field. And then there are maybe 5 other things that you are trying to learn. So not perfect yet, but you will get there. But everything really comes from inside you. That acceptance of yourself will really resonate to so many other things in your life.
I just really want to emphasize what Fariba said, how it's not about how much you know, it's about how you feel. I think that really stems to build your own inner self-confidence, right? It's all about how you feel about your accomplishments. It's literally nobody else matters. At the end of the day, it's just about you. And I think that's like a very great like life motto to live by, that it's about how you feel rather than how much you actually accomplish. So we're going to have 2 more questions and then we'll close up the event. So our second to last question is how you deal with a different power or relationship dynamics of being female when trying to build relationships with your primarily male professors and peers.
So now I get to the point that I need your question to be repeated. So my mind is just like now. Oh my goodness.
No, all these questions are so great. They're very hard hitting journalism right here. So shout out to everybody who submitted questions. So the question was, how do you deal with different power or relationship dynamics of being a female when trying to build relationships with your primarily male professors and
peers? Like building relationship is kind of a difficult thing for me, to be honest. I'm not born to build relationship. I'm born to like maybe work in a cubic environment by my own and just be very focused. So when it comes to building any type of relationship, I would really have to think twice about what my plan is. But like really, like when I think about building relationships, is I don't like to really feel about if I'm trying to build a relationship with a male or a female, kind of a coworker or professor in any environment. It's just the feeling I have is just if you have a genuine interest in building a relationship and you have, like, for my own self, I have a purpose of like working on that relationship and just making it a successful relationship. If it gets to like your coworkers, do I want, like, do I see that person a person that I want to be my career friend? Or if it's in a very personal type of an environment, is this someone that I want to call friend? So it's really about uh, like having this feeling of, okay, this person with all the qualification metrics that you may have, or like maybe restrictions that you may have, like being in an environment that is not easy to make friends with your male peers, just because the way workplace is structured and the way people act around you, like really understanding what you want out of a relationship, and then working from there is just what I can do. It's just generally a hard thing for me to do, but and I can't really, I usually give time to myself to think about what I need from this relationship, what are the values that we share, and I work from there. So if there are any challenges caused by an environment or other peers, the way that I think about uh, it is just really ignoring all the things that I call side effects of the workplace or like education environment, and think about what I need to get out of this. And then if I value that relationship, what I can do to overcome all of those challenges. Uh, as just, but again, for some people, it's an easier thing to do. They are born to like really communicate and build relationship and friendship. For some, it's harder, but it's just all about what you want. And if you want something bad enough, then we'll figure it out.
Yes, I feel as I think Fariba hit the nail on the head perfectly there. I think that, so for me, I consider myself an extroverted introvert. Some people might call that BS, but for me, I think that's the best way to describe it. Where I find that, well, pertaining to the question, I think it also goes down to, I wouldn't think about it as building a relationship with, oh, this is a male professor, how do I navigate that space? I think at the end of the day, it is just forming relationships with people and understanding that they're also just a person, and that whether or not they're a male or female, if you want to build this relationship for whatever reason, whether that be you just need to do better in the course, or you were interested in their research, or maybe you just like them as a person. I think kind of coming into that with that knowledge is important, just not regarding whether they're male or female or whatever. You're just kind of building that relationship. I know that can be challenging because there are those power dynamics, and I would be lying if I say that we just pretend that doesn't exist. I'm not saying to like ignore and like shove it down, but I think when it comes to, if you haven't met the person and you're still meeting and you're just still learning about them and you're just forming that relationship, I think that shouldn't be the first thing that comes to mind. I think that if a situation comes up, then we kind of navigate through that. But I think if you come into the mindset of, oh, this is a male professor and I'm a female student, I think it'll lead you to almost like walking on eggshells in a sense. And it'll make you a lot more nervous. It will bring a lot more tension to the conversation, and that's not an environment and a vibe that you want to bring to that type of conversation. And so I think it's important to kind of distance from that mindset just a little bit, just so that you can form that relationship overall. But I think everything Fariba said was spot on. So
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think it is very important to acknowledge that there are power dynamics, but don't come into a relationship expecting there to be one, or else that's going to exacerbate the problem, right? Like you'll cross that bridge when you get to it. You'll handle those potential relationship or power dynamics as they arise, just because you want to kind of have the benefit of the doubt when you're forming new connections with people, whether it's for social or professional purposes. Yeah, and so to close off our questions, I'm going to ask an easier question. It's not a hard-hitting one, don't worry. So imagine it is not a pandemic time, right? It is a summer Saturday night. What would you be doing?
I have a lot of thoughts in my mind. I'm gonna make sure that I pick the appropriate one for the setting that we are in. So I would say one of my summer Saturday nights that I would do is I love hanging out with my friends. I really cherish the connections that I have with them. And so we tend to celebrate or hang out through food and through restaurants. And so we would like to explore the Minneapolis city scene, see if there's a restaurant in town. So I would foresee us just walking downtown, getting a bite to eat, talking about our day, nothing too serious. It's talking about our day, then our life, how things are going, where we want to be, and the small things like that, taking a walk back, and then we come back and we watch a TV show. All my friends seem to be pre-med for some reason. That was not intentional. That's just how it is. And so they like watching medical based, like Scrubs-ish type of shows. And we got into something called Nurse Jackie, which is just, it's an amazing show if you haven't watched it on Netflix. It deals with the whole idea of like a nurse and like the day-to-day in the ER, and then also a nurse who's like having issues when it comes to like her own addiction. It's a fantastic show if you haven't seen it. So yeah, I'd say that would be my summer Saturday night is staying in. That's great. So.
Like for me, it would be, I'm just really in a weird like place right now. I have a toddler at home. I'm expecting my second child. So this pandemic has caused so much stress, and I'm not going out because I don't know what I will face out there. And it's just really a lot. But if I could take a normal Saturday summer night, I would say I will eat out like easily and without any concern. Will get a babysitter for my daughter without thinking twice about, oh, am I just doing something wrong with like leaving her with someone I don't know who is like has coronavirus or whatever. So just going out, dining out, and then having a movie night. I haven't had that for so long. It's just our routine right now is just working, playing with my daughter, like cooking and going to sleep. So anything that will go outside of that routine would be perfect for me right now.
Honestly, it's just the little things, like the normal everyday things that you wouldn't think twice about were it not for a pandemic. But now you're like, I want to stay inside, but I want to have the choice to go outside, I think is what a lot of people feel. But yes, thank you both so much for answering my questions, the audience's questions. You both gave incredible answers, incredible insight into your journeys, into what it's like to being a woman in STEM, various pieces of advice. I think I gained a lot from what you both say. Hopefully everybody else is taking notes too. If not, there's a recording, so there's always that. You can rewatch it. And then thank you for having me as the host of this event. I think it was incredible to be able to interact with you two as well as the attendees. And yeah, this was a wonderful Thursday night for me.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me. Caitlin, you are an awesome moderator. Like with all those tough questions and navigating between those. Thank you so much. It was an awesome conversation, and I hope everyone else also enjoyed it as much as I did.
Yes, ditto to that as well. Caitlin, you were phenomenal. Thank you so much for moderating this event. This was great. Fariba, it was great to meet you, and I gained so many insights. I mean, I'm just a college student. What do I know? So it's great to kind of learn it from your perspective, and thank you all for having me. This was a blast.
Same for me.
So that's a wrap. Let's all give a huge round of virtual applause to our incredible panelists and hosts, Governess, Fariba, and Caitlin. Thank you guys so much. I was so inspired. Like I could have shed a tear, honestly, writing notes frantically. So yeah, thank you so much for normalizing failure and celebrating success and highlighting the importance of self-care. And some of my favorite quotes was one from Fariba: "We are the doers and they are the talkers." And from Governess, if they want to be trash, let them sit in their own trash. Like I want to get that on a t-shirt. Let's go. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Anyways, the event recording will be sent to you and posted shortly. If you were greatly inspired tonight, feel free to share with your friends, and don't forget to follow nwPlus UBC on all our socials. So that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Medium, and even TikTok. nwPlus has a whole stack of workshops prepared to pop out soon. And of course, stay tuned for cmd-f Phase 3 this hackathon season. Let's meet again soon. So one last favor, when you get the chance, please fill out the short feedback form and let us know how you enjoyed the event, because your input directly inspires our future events. Christy will be dropping that in the chat. And before you sign off for the night, want to hang out with us a little bit longer? Because so do we. We just sent the link to the chat again. If you haven't joined the room already, it's the Glimpse link. We'll be unlocking the speed networking session like right now. So feel free to hop over once we wrap up. And a note, Glimpse might not work for anyone who's on Safari, so we recommend Chrome or Firefox. Yeah, we'll see you there. And most importantly, thank you for your insightful questions, your passion, and eagerness in joining the discussion to normalize success and failure in STEM and empowering and supporting each other as women. We hope you hop off this call feeling slightly more inspired, because you are powerful, you are brave, you are beautiful, and you belong here. This is your seat and no one else's. Your futures are all so bright, and I can't wait to see what lies ahead of you. Good night and see you on Glimpse.